Good evening. Just to, I'm not as good as somebody who can, make you clap, dance to interesting music, but promise us we would keep this interesting. My name is Shanker Sareen. I take care of marketing for Sentinel One. Promise there would be no, marketing plugs or Sentinel One plugs here. It will be a very fair, interesting discussion. Joining me are the so-called interesting gurus. I would not take much time. I'll probably pass it over to Uma. Uma, over to you.
Uh, Very good afternoon from my side, and thank you for inviting me here. I head what is called as private cloud products in SAP. So the whole SAP S/4HANA private cloud on-prem applications engineering side is headed by me with about colleagues around the world. And I'm happy to hear to talk a little bit about AI, ML, generative AI. There are a lot of acronyms that we hear. Sometimes we understand, sometimes we don't understand. Happy to have a conversation. Looking forward for a dialogue rather than a monologue out here. Lokesh.
Thank you, Uma. Once again, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lokesh Gowda. I'm a VP and a General Manager with Optiv. As you all know, Optiv is a cybersecurity company, and we provide cybersecurity services for our customers. Or we ensure that we manage cyber risk for our customers. So I've been in the industry for about 2 decades now, more than 2 decades. It's been a great opportunity which ISACA provided us to be the panelist and share our perspective on the latest the technology. Or AI has been for a long time now, but still we would like to share about what is our perspective on AI and ML and the cybersecurity, what's happening in that domain. And looking forward for a very interesting conversation with my fellow panelists and also with the great audience you have been so far. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
I'm Sarada Vempati. I come from Wells Fargo, spent around 3 years with them. Currently, I lead what we call enterprise functions technology, which includes everything from your credit risk, market risk, compliance, legal, a lot of applications that your teams would be using, and HR. Prior to that, I ran infrastructure teams for the region for quite a good bit of time, a lot of time in the industry, in technology, but primarily in the financial industry. So there is an overlap between technology and financial industry from my experience standpoint. Looking forward to a very happy and healthy dialogue. I know it's a Friday evening for all of you, and I know that Bangalore traffic cannot be that kind on a Friday, but I'm so happy to see such a good audience, even towards the end of the sessions. Appreciate all of you sticking around.
Thank you. So, on that note, let me begin by saying that, while they've given us the session as digital transformation, we would not even discuss on that. We thought the most interesting disruption that's probably happening or the transformation that's happening is more around generative AI, ML. So we thought we'll probably do a demystify AI, generative AI, ML kind of a session. And let me start the discussion with Uma and a small trivia. So Uma has, Uma, can I share that? Uma's got 2 kids. Both of them are doctors. They're doing PhD on the same subject of LLM, generative AI. And, she's so-called probably amongst us the guru. So you can trouble her anything. So she's there to, demystify a lot. But Uma, let me start the discussion.
Thank you, Shankar, for that trivia. But I must say, I'm not a computer engineer, even though my children are. But I am an electrical engineer by profession, learned computer myself. But maybe let's just talk a little bit about AI and ML, because people kind of confuse the terms and are not sure which is what. So artificial intelligence is a broad space. It is about really bringing machine intelligence. How can we really get something to work like a human being, whether it is a robot or anything else? Many of you would have robots in your home, which is used for cleaning, or sometimes the washing machines or the Netflix shows that you use, which all use intelligence. So artificial intelligence has been there for quite some time. Machine learning is heard so much these days. But ML first started in the 1950s with the Turing test, where Alan Turing was asking the question, can machines learn? Can machines think? And that is called as Turing test in 1950, where Alan Turing was able to really come up and say, can it play a game of checkers? And from that time, it has grown over the period of time because it uses computational power, statistical algorithms to find nearest neighbors. There are n number of algorithms which are out there with foundation models. But what we have to keep in mind, what makes it important today, right? If it is there from 1950s, we are now in 2023. What is different now? Why is there so much buzz around it now? What has happened is the power of the computers, the ability to really process data, and the cost of processing has significantly come down, because that is extremely important, right? Whether we have the infrastructure to process terabytes of data, these models are only as good as it can be trained. And if we are able to really process that data, the second is that data even being available for us to be trained. So those are the two big changes which happened in the last 1 decade, even more, which made it accessible for a lot of us. And then large language models. Before we go into GPT-4 or generative AI, how many of you use Google search? Show of hands. Almost all of us use Google search. Google search was the first application of language model. It uses a short text and looks for that pattern and looks for matching. Look when the results were given in the past. But the only thing is in Google search, the text or the length of the text that is used for searching is so small that you could not get much personalized information. Now, what generative AI does is OpenAI has been able to train language models in a way that it is accurate. But again, we have to take it with a pinch of salt. When you use a corpus to train a model, the model is only as good as the data on which it is trained. While it is very good on certain corpuses, certain type of applications, certain type of areas, it is only as good as the data on which it's trained. So when we are approaching these subjects of machine learning or generative AI, what is extremely important is for us to really keep in mind what was the original purpose of the model. Are we using for that purpose? And should we do it with something else? I want to stop here. And
Yeah, no,
then
very interesting. I appreciate that, Uma. That's lots of interesting things. Let me pivot to Sharda. Sharda, I use, obviously, we all use search. I've started lately using ChatGPT kind of tool as well. And ever since Uma said that the output is as good as the data, what would you say around the accuracy of the results that we get? And is it fair to assume that generally, as they say, with time things improve? Do you think in generative AI world, with more and more of people using or adapting, would the output improve with time? Your comments.
So, couple of things I'll start off, right? One thing is, there were a couple of papers that were produced by Stanford in the last few months. Obviously, ChatGPT has been used in the last few months. But if you look at it, from March to June, the accuracy of some of the data that it's giving out has deteriorated. Has decreased. So if you give it a prime number and ask, do you see this as a prime number? And talk to me about the steps that you have taken to come to that conclusion. It has gone from 97% accuracy, this is ChatGPT 4, 97% accuracy to 2%, right? Again, I'm talking about a very specific subset of a case. These papers that were published by Stanford and Berkeley together universities show that there are still some inconsistencies. There are reasons why some of these inconsistencies come up. There are challenges with how your question is framed versus the interpretation. You can ask the same question in multiple different ways, and you get the output that's going to be different. The most common use case that a lot of people have been talking about is, can we take pieces of code and actually put it, plug it into your application and start using it. I'm sure we'll get there. But are we there yet? I don't think so. Most of the companies have taken a very cautious approach for multiple reasons. Privacy aspects, including how do we ensure that we are not going to infringe on somebody's intellectual property, and how do we make sure that the data set it's being trained on is going to help us, right? There are going to be evaluations. There's going to be much better output that will be coming. One of the things that most of us are now looking at is the co-pilots for both GitHub as well as Microsoft 365 products. This is where I can see a huge benefit that we will be getting. But if you take the existing ChatGPT, and I know that a lot of us are doing random querying, I can give you so much of data where the accuracy of it, the hallucination aspect is what we call it, is pretty considerable, right? It's been creating citations that do not exist kind of a thing, and even where their citations have been quoted, the actual papers do not have the content that it's quoting. So to that extent, you might have a variance. So the variability, the lack of predictability, and the hallucination aspect is what concerns us. So it's still a learning phase.
I just like the word hallucination. So please, what exactly? So are you saying that the model itself is hallucinating? It's kind of...
It's not hallucinating like a human would.
Sure.
But it is making things up, right? I mean, the best part of generative AI is it takes the content that exists and can create new content. But the new content has to be based on some data, some facts. When it is creating facts, that is hallucination.
Perfect. Thank you. Sorry, you had something?
Maybe I can just add to that, because this is something which my son was giving us an example, because I was as prepared, I didn't have time to prepare for the session. I said, okay, give me an example, right? So especially when you think about generative AI, I think some of you would have seen the TV serial or the movie Fits of Fury, right? With Bruce Lee's 1970s movie. We all know Shah Rukh Khan never played in that. But generative AI can take the movie Fist of Fury and take Shah Rukh Khan and merge it as if Shah Rukh is the hero of that movie. And you will never know that it was made by a computer and not an original. That is the power of generative AI. Now, how you use it, SPB is gone long back. You can today create an album of SPB with his modulated computer voice. You will not know whether it is artificial or real.
I've seen Sholay with Julia Roberts for sure. Yeah, it's recently. Okay, Lokesh, sorry, you've been quiet. And since this is more of a security audience, so question to you. From a security perspective, I'm sure there are two sides of the same coin. We've been, talking about the good things. Are you seeing more of the bad actors leveraging, ChatGPT or generative AI? And if there is, would that make it difficult for any of the organizations or a SOC engineer to actually catch that?
It was really great insight which Uma gave, and also Sarada mentioned about the generative AI part. So it's all, we are all talking about AI or the ChatGPT being a good man's role or playing a good role. But we have to look at what are the pros, what are the cons of using the AI also. So I think recently you would have come across one of the major threat which I have, which many of you people will be knowing, or is around the phishing has been for more than a decade now. And the AI or the AI has been AI and machine learning has been a significant contribution to the phishing attacks. So it's been now the adversaries or the attackers can use the AI to really formulate the attack vectors in such a fashion that it becomes unnoticed by where the consumers or the people can become victims of these cyber attacks. Phishing has been, we are talking about phishing for about almost more than 2 decades now, and still it has not gone away. And this has been, phishing has been a prominent threat vector, which most of the organizations are trying to address. So even you may see the mails coming as a CEO sending out an email, and it's very easy for you to really manipulate or to really construct those attack vectors. And so that's one thing. And the other thing which I have heard, which we are seeing, is because she mentioned about, or you also mentioned about the Sholay being Julia Roberts playing the Sholay role. We can use, the adversaries have started using the deep fake as like where you can do the identity theft, or probably you can just impersonate as the other person and call, really manipulate or manipulate the system, or even you can manipulate the human also. So there was one incident which happened, I think it was a couple of months back in Kerala, where one of the colleague, the female colleague, called up the person and asked for an emergency fund, probably around 60 or 65,000, and it was its a voice was really sounding very familiar to him, and he really made an attempt to transfer that money, but accidentally he decided to call her back because it was an unknown number. He called her back, and she said that she didn't make any such request. So the deep fake has been another the prominent vector which we are seeing, and people are going to misuse. And it's always, we have to bring in the awareness is very important for any individual on how to use AI. We have not reached there yet, so it's not a completely proven system yet.
Perfect. Sarada, over to you. You know, especially if there are frauds like this happening, which are, you know, not the financial sector per se, but since you come from there, are there any business ethics involved while using AI, especially, you know, as a leader in your organization? Are there some do's and don'ts that the employees or the employer must, you know, ensure that there are checks and balances, guardrails around this?
Sure. The first thing, right, Uma touched on this briefly, the data set that we are training our models is super important. We all know that there's huge bias that exists in our data sets, right? I'm sure all of you have heard a couple of years ago, Google and a couple of other companies were looking at filtration system for their resumes using machine learning algorithms,
Yes.
right?
Yes, we heard.
But they stopped that program. You know the reason? Over the years, your hiring patterns have biases that are inbuilt into it. Now you have trained your data models using that data. So what happens? You are reinforcing the same biases into your new outcomes. The biggest concern that most of us have with using any of the models is biases.
I've heard of that bias case.
Yeah. Same thing with home lending, right? Over the years, typically banks have been giving loans to somebody who can return their loan, right? Return the money back. But that also builds biases because you're judging based on their income, where they live. It could be based on the race, the color of their skin, whatever it is. So are we ensuring that their biases are not there in the training models that we have is the biggest concern. The second thing that we have been talking about quite a good bit is the intellectual property. Like I was talking about it, saying before, this is generative AI. Generative AI means we are building on top of something that already exists. I have a piece of code that I've written, or I've taken this beautiful picture. Now, you have taken pieces of my picture and added it with something else and created a new picture. What about the intellectual or the trademark or anything that I have generated? Am I getting any portion of it? There are a whole lot of legal aspects that are currently going on, trying to evaluate, do we still carry the intellectual property when something is generated? That's the second part of it. And the third one that we were just talking about, the fake aspect. The fakeness that can come with some of this generated AI is also pretty considerable. So with all of these, there is quite a good bit of ethical issues associated with it. I'm not saying we should not be doing it. The cautionary tone in most of the companies' approach will continue with that. And even more so for banks, right? Because we are having customer data. That's the most private for anybody. How do you ensure that the privacy aspect of it continues when we are using these models?
Perfect. Uma, question to you, which is, as she said, if there are so many ifs and buts around generative AI, as a leader in your organization, would you want employees to use generative AI? Would you want no, or is there a way to filter generative AI? Your take on that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what we have to really keep in mind is AI in one form or fashion is going to exist, whether we like it or not. I don't have my phone, but I have an app called TripIt. So I don't put anything into that. I keep traveling, and it kind of keep tracks of my hotel bookings, travel bookings, all of that stuff. So AI is going to become like an electricity maybe 10 years from now or 15 years from now. So we cannot really ignore it. Then what can you do about it? The first thing is to really create a right governance in the organization. That's what we are doing with respect to creating an ethics governance within an organization. What can you do? What can you not do? What can you do with respect to the data training set, especially when we talk about foundation models? Which is your data set, what is your training set, not something which is in the open, and how can you do that? What kind of precautions are you using, especially to ensure data protection laws? When you use personal data, like what Sarada said, with respect to anonymization. Finally, when coming to generative AI, what we have done is we have taken a decision that we will not use GPT-4 or any of the public models as it is. All the companies are going in this direction. We create a private LLM space using GPT-4 and Azure in our company. And then the corpus that we use to train is our own intellectual property. So there is no risk that the employees are putting a company own code or company on data or anything in the public domain. And this is the direction a lot of companies are going to really create their own firewalls or corpus, as you might call it, to really protect the copyright laws and intellectual property rights. But we cannot ignore it, but to really see how do we use it in a right manner to ensure the privacy for the people as well as no violation of anybody's rights. And that's a way to go. TCS, I read somewhere, that started a huge project where they are building an LLM in their own premises to collect and mine the data which they have within their company. And this is the way for companies to go.
Perfect. Lokesh, more of a discussion topic. As she said, with TCS becoming more of a, building more of an in-house, knowledge network, does that increase the attack surface? And does that make an organization more vulnerable from a dark actor's perspective? Assuming you're a competitor, you can use AI, would you want to target something which is, as interesting, just in a private cloud, by a firewall? Would that make it more enticing for a dark actor? And is that something that might happen?
Yes, I completely agree with what you said. So the more data which is available on the cloud, it's always your attack surface. You're increasing the attack surface. So I just wanted to, since Uma was talking about what organization can do. One is whenever if TCS is going and building their own LLM or AI models, so first they should actually consider to see whether they are cyber ready, their cyber readiness for these type of models. So without doing that, if they go and build, so they would have already, the attack vectors, they would have already created, attack surface is already there, and people would have already got in. They will be just waiting for the time to just penetrate into the system. So before getting into any of these, building these models, the one thing which I recommend is all the organizations to first evaluate their cyber readiness for these type of models before kicking off. And if what else what else can be done, or what other things the organization can do, or to your question of whether this is going to increase the attack surface, yes, this is going to absolutely increase the attack surface, and we have to really look at what are the measures which, as an organization, which needs to be followed or to be implemented. And we can talk about some of those controls which they, as an organization, they can do to mitigate these attack surfaces.
Perfect. Sharda, I've honestly run out of questions. So we'll open the floor for discussion. I just wanted to check one thing, and something that I keep thinking. Do you think with more and more LLM models, would it take a industry-specific flavor? Do you think there'll be, and if probably, it could be a dumb question, there already exists. Do you think LLMs would be one for banking, one for manufacturing? Would there be industry-specific flavors?
It's going to be even more specific than that. So for example, if you're looking at advisors, financial advisors, there are going to be specific models associated with that. If you know, most of us use contact center, right? I mean, I know that we typically do not want to call the bank anymore. We want to use the chatbots. So the chatbots today are pretty boring, I'm sorry to say, right? The responses they give are very canned. Think of the chatbots, the contact center aspect of it, using LLMs. It's going to personalize it. It knows who you are, your complete history. I know the privacy aspect of it, but at the same time, it knows what I really want, and if you can solve my question quicker. Yesterday, I was on a call with the bank for 30 minutes to get a simple address change for one of my checks, right? That shouldn't have taken that long. If you have the ability for it to understand, it being the chatbot, and you personalize it to the point where it can do it, it's going to be super critical. And it's a huge productivity improvement also for both the customer as well as the bank. So to go back to your question, yes, we will be having very specific LLM models that are going to be specific for different aspects within technology. Yeah.
Wow. Uma, anything to add there?
No, I think what we will really see is that area-wise we will have focus, because what is needed for a software engineering, because there was a McKinsey study which was done which says the money or the economic benefit which will come out of generative AI is close to about 4 trillion. And there are areas which they say as very important. One area is obviously the software development, whether there will be a developer job in the future or whether can the code be generated automatically. User assistance, testing, all that stuff that is there. And then especially the sales and communications. But what we'll have to also keep in mind is large language models are dependent on text or unstructured data. So wherever you have a processing of structured data, you have to go back to foundation models. And all of these need a lot of money as well. We'll have to really see how the cost of computing comes down for further infiltration of AI or generative AI, because today we are using the data which is trained, which is almost 3 years old, maybe 2021, late 2021s, not the data from 2023. So we have to really see how the computing cost comes down for this to become much more prevalent in the future, and also which are the right use cases. Not every use case is an AI use case, and that's also a choice that organization has to make as to know where do I apply this. Because each call to OpenAI is costing us money. Not in the open space, but if as an enterprise is going for an OpenAI or a tie-up with Azure and going to use this as a business service, this is going to cost money. And then we'll have to see what that means. And it is not only OpenAI, right? Today we have Aleph Alpha, we have Llama, we have Bard, we have n number of players. Now, how do those various models compare? And what is going to be the cost for using that? All that would matter.
Perfect. Lokesh, from I just thought about it. So interestingly, when Sharda was sharing, how call center bots would become very intelligent, it gave me an idea that probably, that would eat into the job aspect. Probably it will make some of the call center agents redundant. Probably people would prefer more intelligent, personalized AI chatbots. But from a cybersecurity perspective, where the challenge is the other way around, there is a big dearth of good cybersecurity professionals. Is there a future of using AI for the betterment? Because if that can be used by, a generic SOC engineer to probably perform some queries which are very intelligent? Any idea on that?
It's really a great question, Shanker. As you mentioned, so we are already a dearth in cybersecurity professionals available in the market, and one is we have shortage of resources, and at the same time, whomever we get them, training them, and we are doing a lot of investment in really making them a job ready or who can perform the task. But if I have to look at from whether this is going to be, whether it is going to be, it's going to take away the jobs, I don't see that's coming, because as a cyber professional, I always see that AI is something which AI and automation, we have been using it for decades now. So that's how most of the security products have been built, because it's all about automating and bringing the intelligence into the system. And this is going to continue. And for if you look at the life cycle of any a SOC consultant or a SOC analyst, so what is that on day-to-day, what they are going to do? One is they are going to identify the issues, then they may investigate the issues, and they report the issues, and they may do some research on if there are anything which they have found. So for identification, again, they can so they can really use the AI to identify what type of issues. Like if you take up any particular domain, you can just look at whether whether it is having any malware or any executables which is there linked in the URL. So AI is, so if you look at what we have in the system, we have a huge set of data. The logs are available. So we need somebody who can really investigate or write the algorithms which can actually go ahead and identify what is actually happening. So there are a set of things which is already available in the logs. So now we have to really look at for those outliers or anomalies on what is actually, whether there is a problem or is there an issue. So if you have found an issue, then you have to look at how you're going to report that. So and we have various the compliance which comes into play, and whether it has to be mapped into that particular intelligence can be used to map it to the compliance or the frameworks which the organization is using. And in case if there is if an analyst identifies a malware or an issue, so he can use the AI or the chatbot to really go and research about what this malware is about and what it is, what is the impact it can do. And and they can look at the bigger picture of where all it can affect the system. So probably they will be just looking at when there is, when an incident happens, a ticket will be raised. So they just look at whether they just follow that particular, so they don't see where all it can impact. So AI can be leveraged to really bring in that analytical skills among or that intelligence to the analyst, and they can become more effective and efficient in performing their job.
Sarada, any use case, in your banking sector around fraud prevention, fraud detection that, probably you unearthed using an AI, or is there any case study around that?
Couple of things that I can think of, right? One is the current models that we have been using for detecting fraud are pretty, the base data itself doesn't have a lot of fraud, which is good, right? Typically, we have 0.5% of our cases which are fraud, right? Then what happens is you do not have enough data to train your models. Now, one of the biggest benefits that we are seeing with LLMs is the synthetic data creation. So what you're doing is the edge cases that would typically not be easily available through using your regular data helps you look for patterns that do not usually come with structured data, right? This is unstructured data which helps you train your models on the edge cases.
You're feeding the AI to.
And this is synthetic data, right? This is not actual data, but it can create data that helps you train your models a lot better to look for patterns.
True. Uma, anything from your, from a, not SAP per se, but anything interesting, a use case where, an organization or industry has used AI in a, in a good sense? In a beneficial way?
Yeah, basically what we are trying to see is how can we make, how can we create efficiency? Efficiency from the point of software development or efficiency from the point of even end users. You spoke about logs, right? Even I know many of you use SAP software or the clients that you work with use SAP software, and whenever there is problem, there are tons and tens, several megabytes of data which comes as problems. Now, AI with specialized algorithms helps you to identify which are those time slots where you had the problem, where were the anomalies, what were the optimization potential that you have, even to detect performance issues with systems. Because with huge multiple systems, I was with one of our big customers who has 1,000 installations across 96 countries, and they can't really accept a latency, and they are running 400 plants and 600 distributed warehouses. Now, when you are running such a big applications and you have performance latency, so with foundation models, this is not generative AI, but with foundation models, you can identify what are your bottlenecks based on the past data. How can you predict and how can you plan the work or plan for failures much ahead in advance rather than it happening, then you have to rectify for that.
Perfect. You know what? I've exhausted all my questions. I tried my best to grill these people. If you realize, I had some questions which I didn't even use because luckily the organizers gave us sufficient time. So now the floor is all yours. Please ask them all tough questions. Yes, sir. And just let us know who to.
Please remember that Uma has 2 kids doing PhD, one done and one doing PhD in artificial intelligence
Remember,
and machine
Sarada
learning.
has the maximum fan following, and Lokesh is your security guy. If it helps. So you've got. Can we have the mic, please?
The world is already biased. Okay. If you want to get any data which is unbiased, you have to get it from some other planet. Okay. Okay. So whatever you are going to give it to AI, it is already biased data. And if you ask, if you hack a system, will God punish you or not? The artificial intelligence doesn't say there is no God. Okay. Okay. So that's the reason. So there is bias is always exist, and we have to live with that bias. And that's the first thing which I would like to tell. And the second thing is basically how to counterattack in this cybersecurity. It is like, Terminator movie. We have to program the Cyberdyne now. A good AI, okay. So like bad AI, what we are expecting, we have to start good AI also should work. Okay, so the generating the good AI to counter the bad AI is the work which we need to do. That's what the real thing, okay. Then the third, which related to the copyright, okay. So if I use AI and then if I generate something, naturally I am the creator, not the AI, or the owner of the AI cannot claim the copyright, okay, because that is my creativity. I utilized that AI to generate that, okay. That's how it is saying, okay, the industry says like that, okay. So this is what my thought, you can counter it.
Maybe just a point on the last part, right? Because right now they use a lot of, let's say, painting, image generation, art, creativity, poetry writing, story writing. They use AI. So assuming that an author is really looking for, how do I write the next chapter of my novel? And they just ask OpenAI. OpenAI has learned from other books or other stories that are available, right? And then you don't know from where it has taken, because it doesn't tell you these are the original source from it which took, and it is proposing you the next chapter of the novel. And if you really take that, you can get into a lot of publisher kind of problems as such to really go with that as such. That is just one example where it might run into problems.
To answer your first question about biases, absolutely agree with you. There are biases in this world. I don't think we'll ever find a data set that does not have it. But going back to what I was talking about, the synthetic data creation, hopefully we can actually train our models with synthetic data that does not have biases as inbuilt into it, right? That's one part of it. The guardrails that we have to keep to make sure that we understand the outcomes. Say, for example, a particular bank is using, by the way, they're not allowed to use it, but in case they're using a model to say yes or no for a loan, as long as I do not understand the logic behind why I declined a loan or why I allowed a loan, then I'm letting a machine decide for me. And the transparency has to exist, otherwise you know that biases will creep in. That's where it is.
So to answer to your question on using a good AI in the cybersecurity field. So AI, I think cyber field was one of the early adapters of AI, because if you look at any security product, so AI is already been baked into the security product. So even if you take up recently, I think it was in February, Microsoft launched their Copilot. So it's the threat intelligence platforms is there. So even Sentinel-1 has Purple AI is there. So the security product companies have already started leveraging AI in a better fashion, and I think so. The AI is going to really add a lot of value in the cybersecurity field than when compared to the other industries. That's what I would like to mention about. So I think for your question, yeah. So from the cybersecurity standpoint, yes, we are already we have already, and this is not so AI is something new, but automation is been, so all the security products what has been built in, it's all through the automation or the ML which we have been using for the decades now. So
Perfect.
that's
Thank you, gentlemen. Any other question?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Kaushik. So like as you said, there are a lot of AI tools which has been developed for creating security postures management or cybersecurity. Vis-a-vis, there are threat actors who are also using AIs to launch attack, and especially botnet attack, Mirai botnet, which is a famous US Mirai botnet attacks, and they are also launching customized ransomware, which is called ransomware as a service, RAS. So what is the strategy? And the second portion of it's that there are companies, I mean, we deal with a lot of clients in US and EMEA region, wherein they do not have registered offices. They only work on cloud, maybe in Azure or in the public infrastructure. They are small companies, let's say 50 to 100 people, but they do have a lot of data, dealing with every day. Let's say they are, supply chain companies or other companies who deal with a lot of data, and they have open-ended, they do not have multi-factor authentication. When we ask them, do you have a multi-factor authentication, or do you use Okta or Google, kind of SSO platform? They do not have that. They only have an RDP protocol, or they also, interestingly, in Amazon AWS, we have also seen that they have pre-signed URLs for the customer, which has been expired date as per Amazon S3, that is less than or equal to 7 days, but they are using more than 7 days, 10 days. So those are practically loopholes which basically threat actors are finding. So AI attack against AI, kind of defense. So what will be the strategy for those companies as a security posture or a cybersecurity platform?
Great. So I think, yeah, so the one thing is, so as earlier I mentioned, so the organization need to be checking for their the cyber readiness. So that's something which they have to do. And there are a few things which they have to implement. One is the user education. Awareness is very much important. So that's something which we need to educate how the adversaries or can misuse the AI and manipulate the system. So that's the user awareness is something which is very much important. The second thing is the authentication part. So whenever you are trying to, because anything it is going to be on, especially for the phishing part. So we can use the multi-factor authentication. That is something which can be leveraged, and also bringing in there are already the various control frameworks is already available, like a Meteor, is there, and also on the NIST risk management framework. So these controls the organizations can use to really implement or check for the readiness for the AI models. The the attack vector, the attack surface has already increased with the AI, and whatever as a professionals for the technology access what we have, even the adversaries have more, and they have more time to really play around with the system. And so the bigger challenge where I see is when you look at earlier, if there is a piece of code which is available or a patch which is there, so now they can use AI. The adversaries can use the AI to understand what this actually what this patch is going to do, and they can really it becomes a lot more easier for them to really break the system. So there is it's really a very challenging part. So we all need to see how we can really, the defense is depth, or already the 5 principles of cyber defense is there. So we have to look at the holistic way of implementing it. And the first step which I would ask all the organizations to do is to check their readiness.
Lokesh, sorry, I know we're short of time, and I had 2 more questions. Okay. We'll start. Sorry, he's been raising his hand for a while. Shorter question, shorter answer, please. Yes, sir. You can just, we'll hear you.
Sorry, can I ask the question, or, sorry, I'm here, this side. Sorry, can I ask the question? Okay.
Yes, please go ahead. Sorry, we'll just come back to you.
It's very quick questions. I'm like, obviously, my name is Abhinash Ramantara. I'm from Microland Limited as a cybersecurity manager. I'm just thinking, like, because we are discussing about lots of this changes of the AI and the machine learning. So obviously it's kind of a Mickey Mouse race game. Like, we are improving, the thieves are improving, and that's going on. But is there anything that you could think, what is not going to be changed, or at least that we are not anticipating that these are the things are going to stay as it is? A lot of things are changing, that's fine. But what is not going to change?
Anything that will remain constant?
Change is going to be the constant. Because the technology is changing at such a fast pace that the only way is to really keep up with that and to really adjust the mechanisms, because the pace at which the advancements are happening with respect to data processing, as well as the correctness and the statistical computing capabilities is so high that the only way what is going to be constant is change and our ability to adjust with it.
Thank you. Your question.
Yeah. So I was asking basically, as decision makings become more and more predictive using data and ML, is that going to deteriorate the ability of the company to innovate itself?
Sarada, do you want to take that?
That's a very good question, right? Because if we start depending on the machines to be, the creativity aspect till now, till we had the LLM models come in, the one aspect that we knew for sure, creativity was still with us as humans, right? The machines weren't doing creativity. But in the recent past, you have seen them, as Uma was talking about, poems, artwork, everything is being created. But if you look at it, we are calling these co-pilots. We are not calling them pilots. We are still in the pilot seat. And I'm hoping we'll continue to be in the pilot seat.
Hello.
I believe, okay, that shall be the last question for
Yes.
Thank you so much. Hello, chair members and everyone here. My name is Rishabh Sharma. I'm from KPMG. My question is related to, we know that the adoption of AI is everywhere. But mainly, where we stand on governing the AI in our industry. Like, there are still so many, we can say, harms related to AI, such as there is adversarial attacks, and there are privacy concerns. So where do we stand currently for governing the AI right now?
Sarada covered that, the guardrails.
Yeah, I was talking about it in a couple of different places, right, throughout the session today. We will not be, most companies, and a lot of us come from regulated companies, we will not be able to adopt because of the governance aspects, because of the compliance reasons, anything that we cannot explain. The transparency and predictability has to exist in what we are implementing. So as the technology is evolving, the regulatory aspect also evolves. And that through that we will have governance, and I'm sure KPMG will be helping us in figuring out some of the solutions.
Definitely. Thank you so much.